Hello and welcome to UnJustified, where we always cover the truth, the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, on an unbiased and sometimes very unpopular opinion. If you're not a member of our newest channel, Unjustified Crimes, please join us over there as well. You can hit the link in the description box below. There is where we cover all of the breaking crime news. And let's get right into today's video.
This is Kara Robinson. Okay, when Kara was 15 years old, she was at a friend's house and her friend had went inside to take a shower. Kara was just in the front yard watering plants in front of the friend's house. Now this all happened in West Columbia, South Carolina, and it happened in the early afternoon of June the 24th of 2002. Now while Kara was out there watering these plants, there was a Trans Am and it pulled up in the driveway, and a very polite looking guy, probably she thought maybe in his late 30s. He was wearing jeans and like a button down shirt, and he had on a baseball cap.
Nice looking guy. And so he came over to me.
Well, he got out of the car and he had some pamphlets in his hand, and he started asking her questions. At first he asked her, he says, "Is your parents at home?" And she answered him and said, "Well, this isn't even my house. This is just my friend's house." And then he said, "Okay, well, what about her parents? Are her parents at home?" And she said, "No, her parents is not home right now either." And the guy says, "Well, that's okay. I'll just leave these with you and maybe you can give them to her, the parents." And so then he starts walking towards her. Kara said that it was kind of uncomfortable, but it was like he was kind of getting a little too close, making her uncomfortable.
Kind of entered my personal space and was like, okay, this feels a little awkward. But then again, he was handing me something, and he came to hand me the brochures with his left hand.
So she just reached out to take the pamphlets from him. And when she did this, the man, immediately, like in a flash, he pulled out a weapon and he pressed it on her neck and forced her to walk towards his car.
There was no question in my mind that I had to do what he said, because he was bigger than me and he had the advantage. He had a gun.
So she walked towards his car and he opened the back door, and there was a storage bin that he had in the back seat of his car. And he forced her to get into this storage bin. Okay, now keep in mind at the time that this is happening, Kara is only 15 years old, and this guy was later identified as a serial killer named Richard Evantis. So he made Kara squeeze into this storage container, this tub in the back seat of his car, and he barely put the top on it. He just laid it over the top of the container. But as he drove, Kara said immediately her instincts kicked in, and she started just counting the turns he made and whether he was turning left or right and things of that nature. So hopefully if she could get away from him, she could find her way back home.
I felt him get on the interstate. He drove for maybe 10-15 minutes before he stopped, and when he stopped, he opened the container and I could see just kind of like he'd pulled over off the side of the road where maybe there were some trees or something. And that was like the first time that he spoke to me. And
she was noticing little details of what he was doing. It's like she noticed that he was listening to like a classic rock station, and also seen that he was smoking like Marlboro Red cigarettes. She even memorized the serial number that was on the inside of the plastic container that he made her squeeze herself into. Later, Kara said that her survival mechanism, it was just an immediate kick in. Like she said, she really didn't even have any fear that kicked in at that moment. It was just a survival mechanism. She just said to herself, all right, she's going to gather as much information as she can. She said the human will to survive and the survival mechanism really just cannot be underestimated. She said on his way of driving that he pulled over at one point and he restrained her with these handcuffs, and he even put a gag in her mouth. Then is when he took her to his very cluttered up apartment.
Over to, I felt him carry it and then set it down, and then he drug it And at that point, I could tell that he drug it over concrete, the texture, and I could feel him drag over a threshold. And, the sound changed, and then he shut the door.
He also had a guinea pig and a lizard and some other small animals. But he ended up assaulting her for 18 hours. Now, by this time, she was absolutely terrified. And so she started trying to find ways that she could identify him if she could get away. She even memorized the name of his doctors and his dentists that were pinned up on the refrigerator. And she was just trying to keep him calm. Like when he asked her if she wanted some food, she said, "Well, I'm not going to eat right now, but is there anything that I can do for you?" And she said that she actually ended up sweeping his kitchen floor just to try to gain his trust. Now,
but he was polite.
the sheriff later said that the kind of manipulation that she was playing on him may have helped save her life. She was just putting him at ease and making him feel comfortable, trying to gain his trust. And that's actually what police negotiators do. She controlled her emotions to the point where she was able to develop a plan for herself. Now, just as it was becoming daylight and he had went to sleep, Kara was able to free one hand from the handcuffs.
The thing that I did is I tried to kind of reach my hand to unscrew that C-clasp, and I couldn't quite do it. So there was just enough room that I could kind of get it to my mouth, and I used my teeth to unscrew it.
And unclip one of the leg restraints. And then she quietly tiptoed to the front door and she made her escape. She ran towards a car that was in the parking lot, and there was 2 people inside this car. She asked them to please take her to the police station. And this is where she told them of what had happened to her.
The deputy that was there, I felt he did not believe anything that I was saying. I was like, I still have handcuffs.
She was asked by the officers to take them back to his apartment. And because of everything that she had observed and the help of the maintenance man at the apartment, they were able to find his apartment. However, by the time that the authorities got there, Avantes had already fled. But inside of his apartment, authorities found a locked, like a footlocker, and it had these newspaper clippings in it. These newspapers were about some unsolved murders of 3 different girls. It was Sophia Silva and 2 sisters, Katie and Kristen Lisk. All 3 of these girls had gone missing in Virginia, but these girls had went missing more than 5 years before Kara's abduction.
Things in that footlocker was a newspaper from Spotsylvania, Virginia, and the headline was that these 2 sisters' bodies had been located in a river there. That was pretty telling based on the circumstances involving Kara.
Police actually tracked Avantes to Sarasota, Florida, and there was a high-speed chase, and it ended when he ran over some spike strips on the highway and he was attacked by a police dog. At that point, Avantes pulled out a weapon and took his own life.
I wanted to have my day in court across from him. I wanted him to look at me across a courtroom and know that choosing me, that was his biggest mistake.
After investigation and DNA analysis, it was confirmed that Avantes was the serial killer that had taken the lives of these 3 girls that had went missing in Virginia more than 5 years earlier. Kara, saving her own life, she was able to solve 3 unsolved murders. And for her help in solving the murders, Kara received $150,000 in reward money, and she was even able to meet their family. Kara said, "It was one of the most important things that's ever happened to me because it brought home the importance of what I did, because I felt like, wow, I'm actually giving these families something that they never would have gotten without me. Just the closure of knowing that the person responsible for their daughter's deaths is no longer here." Sheriff Lott encouraged Kara to take a part-time job in the summer during her high school and college years, just doing administrative work in the sheriff's department.
I met with her and her family in my office. She was a survivor, and she was a fighter, and she was a warrior, and she wasn't going to be a victim.
He sort of immediately took me under his wing and treated me like a family member.
I've got daughters myself, and I just kind of adopted her as one of my daughters too, and wanted to make sure that she continued to be in that survivor. And so we bonded.
Kara later became a school resource officer and an investigator on child abuse and SA cases. This is the actual photo that was taken of Kara at the police department the morning that she came in. There is a big story on Kara on the Oxygen channel. She also has a book. All of that I will put in the description box below. She has a website as well. She's very much a hero, and to be 15 years old when this happened to her, for her instincts to kick in such as they did on a fight or flight, she done an amazing job keeping her composure together and planning her escape from almost the moment that she was taken, as well as being able to unknowingly bring closure to 2 families and solve 3 murders of 3 other teenage girls. Another twist in this story is this man was also married.
That's right. He's married.
I was his wife, and his mother had left to go to Disney World.
Very interesting story. A very erotic girl. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, this is Unjustified.